Oh, so with that, so Jambo, I hope everybody's having a fantastic afternoon. Thank you so much for being here today. It's really a privilege to be able to be talking to you about Kenya and the Swahili culture and everything that comes with that. So I prepared a presentation. It's really for me to remember what to talk about when I'm talking to you. So of course, at any point, I might digress, I might do other things, I might talk about something else that's not necessarily in the presentation, but that's the fun of it, yeah? So I am going to go ahead and share my screen so that you can see. You'll notice some pictures on each slide. These are actually actual pictures that my husband took while he was visiting East Africa. Some of them are from Kenya, some of them are from Tanzania. The animal pictures only. The other ones I might have taken from Google. So we should be fine. All right, so let us start. Now, even though we're talking about Kenya, it's impossible to talk about Kenya without speaking about East Africa, just because of the very many shared cultural elements. So for instance, look at this map here. This is Kenya. It's on the eastern part of Africa. And this ocean right here, this is the Indian Ocean, okay? So why is this important? This Indian Ocean actually connects East Africa to a lot of, to India and all those other cool cultures. And things have come to East Africa from across the ocean that have made these cultures around here very distinct. They're littoral cultures. So that means they're coastal influences in the cultures that are along all of these sections here. Okay, so whether it's the food, whether it's the language, whether it's music, they all have a lot of cultural influences from India. Okay, so even though we'll talk about food later, but something as simple as chai, you know, the tea, it actually comes from India, but by the time it crossed the ocean and got to East Africa, it developed its own twist. Something like pilau, this is a rice dish. Some of you might know it as rice pilaf. Indian pilau is very similar to Kenyan pilau, just because of the ocean. What samosas, just a lot of really nice things that came through trade and those types of interactions. Religion, Islam came through the Indian Ocean and of course, actually up here too, but a lot of cultural exchanges have happened just because this section shares the Indian Ocean coast, okay? Anywho, and then so here we have Kenya, and then on this other side, we have Congo, we have the Sudan, we have Ethiopia. So why is this important also? Because this Swahili, we're going to talk about that later, but it's a Bantu language. And the Bantu people are among the 5 major linguistic groups in in Africa. So inside the Bantu group, we have other language groups that are smaller. Swahili is one of those language groups. So you can understand why we have Swahili all over these places. We have Swahili in Congo, we have Swahili in Tanzania, we have Swahili in Uganda, and so on and so forth. So this is why I started talking about Kenya by talking about East Africa, okay? So let us go on. Now, we get into Kenya and the image is a little blurry. So we have different provinces. I think nowadays they went to calling them, I don't even know what they're calling themselves. They just changed the constitution a few years ago. So everything is different. But for the longest time, they were called provinces instead of counties. So very distinctive climates. You would think because it's such a tiny country, the size of Texas, it would have one climate. Nope, everything is so different. So up here, desert-like Arizona type of desert, very dry, very hot. And then you come around here, this section, and it's super cold. Actually, Mount Kenya is in this province called Central Province. Mount Kenya is here, they actually get snow. It's so cold that they rear sheep that are called the merino sheep. These sheep are found in Scotland and such types of climates. That's how cold it is. But generally, climate is mild. Think about Denver around here, okay? Except we don't get snow like in cities and everything like that. It just gets really cold. You know, the type of cold that gets into your bones, you know, very annoying. And now let's talk about the people of Kenya. There are about 42 different ethnic groups. People like to call them tribes, but from a historical point of view, we like to call them ethnic groups just because it's when you think about a tribe, you're thinking about small groups of people just in a small place living in huts. Just that's the image that comes up when you're thinking about tribes. And this name was created by anthropologists who were trying to explain people who were not like them. And as you know, most anthropologists in those colonial days were old white men who came with their own preconceived ideas of what civilization should look like. So of course, the other was called tribes. We call them ethnic groups because they share languages, they share cultural characteristics. But let's look at the Kikuyu right here. It's a very huge ethnic group. We're talking about over 7 million people, right? So technically, there are countries that are like the Swiss. I like the Swiss. They're about, I don't know, the last time I checked, there were about 3 million, but you never hear about the Swiss tribe. You hear about the Swiss people, right? So usually when you're trying to refer to African speaking languages, just call them ethnic groups or the Kikuyu people or the Kalenjin people, etc., etc. So we have about 42 different groups, and that can be a problem when you have one country, 42 different ethnic groups with different languages and different cultures. Technically, all of these people should not have been one people, right? Mm-hmm. But because of colonialism, they decided to make these artificial borders, right? This was non-existent. So this creates a different problem for people. How do you communicate? How do you see each other as part of the same group? So the first president of Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta, authorized that we were going to have two languages. One, the official language, which is English, the language of the British. And this is the language that you are instructed with at school. This is the language that, so if it's math, science, everything else, you learn it in English from when you're in kindergarten. And then you also learn it as a subject. And then we have Swahili. Swahili is the local language that was used as the national language to quote unquote unite all these other ethnicities. Okay, so this is a language, one, it was taught in school as a language, as a subject, and then two, you could learn it on the streets. For instance, my mom comes from this, where is this? Embu ethnic group, okay? They're somewhere here in the Eastern Province. And then my dad comes from the Kikuyu. His parents came from Central Province. So which language do you teach the kids at home? So what most parents ended up doing, they just let the kids speak Swahili. Because when you're playing, so here's the cool thing that happened. My mom was a civil servant. So she was moved all the way, she was transferred all the way to the Rift Valley in the land of the Kalenjin people. So your neighbors are Kalenjin speakers, and maybe their parents have been moved from their areas like Nyanza, they speak Luo. So we have a group of people living together, talking totally different languages. So some kids, their parents insisted and they learned their mother tongue, and they also learned the language of the people that surrounded them. That's why most Africans can speak at least 3 languages. But then if you came from my family, you ended up speaking Swahili and English, and somehow I was never able to pick up Luo or Kikuyu or all the other languages. Okay, so those are some of the complexities that exist when you grow up in a country that has so many backgrounds that you have to deal with. But every kid on the street can speak Swahili, okay? Now, If you're wealthy, that's different, because your parents were able to send you to good schools and you are supposed to speak the Queen's English. In fact, in some schools, you would get whooped for speaking Swahili. How crazy is that? You know, because they thought if you didn't speak English properly, then you would not be able to get a good job, and then your life was ruined. So there was a lot of emphasis that was placed on you being able to speak English. So even if your parents were poor, that is one thing every parent wanted for their kid. You know, you are able to speak English so that you can get a good job. So that's the type of pressure kids had to deal with. So you'll notice, I don't know how many Kenyans you've met, but you'll notice that most of them will not speak Swahili really well, but they'll speak impeccable English, just because that is what was emphasized at home, at school, job markets, and all that. Okay, so now let us start looking. If you know about the Maasai, these are the most famous people. It's pretty much everything when they are doing tourist advertisements. This is what they'll show. The Maasai people, you know, they're warriors, they wear colorful clothes, they're just beautiful people. So what makes this Maasai very interesting is that when the colonialists came, so they first of all came from the coast, you know, so they're trying to connect the coast to Uganda. Kenya was an accident because, where do I start? So the source of the Nile is Lake Victoria. And let me go back to that picture of ours. Here is Lake Victoria, okay? So the British were interested in Egypt. So they knew whoever controlled the Nile had all the power. So what are they doing? They find the source of the Nile, which is Lake Victoria. And because they wanted to be able to transport things, they want to connect the ocean to, and that's how Kenya accidentally became colonized. They were not looking for Kenya. They just wanted to make sure that it was going to be productive. So when they're building the railway, they wanted to also grow corn to make sure that it was paying for itself. And they discovered beautiful land. But the Maasai had a voracious reputation. Everybody was scared of them. You know, so that's why slavery didn't actually get into the interior of Kenya, because the British were afraid of the Maasai. And for the most part, they were never really able to put them in one place. And therefore, European influence was never able to really get a hold of. So this is why, of all the ethnic groups in Kenya, the Maasai have managed to maintain a semblance of their cultural influences. I mean, they have stuck to that for the most part. Just because they were nomads, they moved away, they had a fierce reputation. So that protected them for the most part, you know? So it's usually very interesting for those who are witnesses to see a brother who's managed to be, somebody who's managed to become a witness from the Maasai ethnic group, because it's community. It's really difficult to be able to do that. Okay. So, and they also live in some of the most magnificent areas, the national parks, the Maasai Mara. This is where Scott, some of this might be from this across the border in Tanzania, but some of these are also from Maasai Mara. So really beautiful animals. And yeah, so I just put that there because I thought they're really cool. Yeah. So let's talk about Swahili. There are very many dialects of Swahili, about 20. And you might ask, why do we have so many dialects of Swahili as a language? So first of all, like I said, Swahili is a Bantu language. And if you want to know what a Bantu language is, when they're talking about a person, it's gonna have something like tu or do, something, a variation of that. Let me give you an example of 3 languages that are Bantu. So Swahili, and then we have Kikuyu, which is also my mother tongue. And then we have Luya, which is also a Bantu language. So Swahili, they say mtu for a person, okay? Kikuyu, they say modo, okay? Luya, they'll say mundu. So if you examine the thousands of languages that are categorized as a Bantu language, they will have this. Zulu is also a Bantu language. You know, there's so many Kikongo languages that also. And then Swahili also, of course, like I mentioned, is a Bantu language. So being a Bantu language, depending on the region that it came and developed, it developed its own distinct dialect, okay? Just like in America. I'll tell you a funny story. When I first arrived and I was talking to somebody, they must have been from the South or where, I don't know where they had come from. They started speaking and I literally just stared at them. And I was confused because I thought I knew how to speak English. And the only way I could describe how it sounded to me is like they were playing a banjo. You know, that's how it sounded to me. I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about. So even though they were speaking English, granted, I've become really good at understanding dialects nowadays, accents nowadays. So the difference between an accent and a dialect is that sometimes they're words, the same words, but they're said slightly different. So for instance, regular standardized, before I talk about that, so when the missionaries came to East Africa, they decided this was too much. You know, we want to be able to translate the Bible in Swahili. We want to be able to write books in Swahili, but there's like 3,000 dialects in their heads. So what do? They went to Zanzibar. Okay, let's go back to our map here. Zanzibar is an island off of Tanzania. It used to be Tanganyika and Zanzibar, and then it was joined into one country to be Tanzania, but I digress. So Zanzibar had a dialect called Kiunguja. Okay, Unguja is the Swahili name for the island of Zanzibar. So they decided that the dialect of Zanzibar, Kiunguja, was going to be the main standardized dialect. So that's what they wrote books in. And anytime you go to school, this is the dialect. This is the bougie Swahili dialect, you know? So if you like educated and this is what you speak, okay? So you like, for instance, in Kenya, they have their own version of Swahili. But when I was trained in school, I was trained in the Kiunguja dialect. When you hear people talking about, oh, Swahili Tanzania is great, it's just because it's closely related to the Kiunguja dialect. The funny thing is, this is the most Arabicized dialect there is. It has a lot of Arabic influence. Guess what? Because the Arabs made their camps along this hip. They actually created city-states. Each city had a government and it was ruled by Islamic law and everything. And Zanzibar was one of those things. So that's how we ended up with our lovely, standardized, formal Swahili. This is what we teach. And this is what I usually insist, if you want to actually understand how the grammar rules work, learn this. And then you'll be in a position to learn all the others. It's funny, when I first heard Congolese Swahili, it was after I came to St. Louis. I had never heard Congolese Swahili. And the first time I heard it, I just went like this. I don't know what's going on. But because I had the advantage of knowing the standardized Swahili, it only took me a few hours to see the patterns. I was like, okay, they're saying this, but it's actually this and that and that. And when you have a firm foundation in a language, in its basics, then you're able to spin, depending on where you're at, okay? So let's do this. Okay, so that's about Swahili. Let's talk about Kenya. Kenya is a very weird place. Why do I mean? One minute you can feel like you're in New York, and then the next minute, you'll feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. It's very divided according to the socioeconomic status. In Kenya, if you're wealthy, you're really wealthy. And then if you're poor, you're poor. So growing up, this was pretty much how I got my water. for my siblings. We'd go to a river, and this jerrycan, this poor kid, yeah, this is about 20 liters. It's about 40 pounds. I don't even know how that kid is going to be able, at least I was a little older when I started fetching water from the river. And as a firstborn girl, it's your responsibility to take care of your siblings. So I'm the eldest of four. And the sister follows me, she's 5 years younger than me. So of course, when they would go to school, it's your responsibility to get up early in the morning, go to the river. If you're smart, you fetch your water the night before, because you don't want to get up early in the morning to go fetch water. It's not fun, because you have to do what? You have to make breakfast in your little kitchen, okay? So you use firewood, and the firewood, you better hope no rain fell on it overnight. Have you ever tried cooking with firewood that is wet? It is not fun. It's smoky, and it takes 3,000 years to light. Absolutely miserable. But, you get used to it, and it gives every food you cook a certain characteristics, So, hey, you get used to it after a while, and you love it. And then most people in the rural areas are self-sufficient, which means they cook. They grow the food that they cook. My mom, like all the other women, had her vegetable garden like this. But remember, this needs to be watered. So guess who's getting the water to water those plants? It's the kids. The more kids you have, the better. That might help you understand why a lot of people have a lot of kids, because it's a source of labor. If you have a lot of kids, that means you're able to, look, this lovely family here, they're probably members of the same family tilling the land. And then they'll probably share the food that comes, and then you sell the excess to be able to pay for school fees and all the other necessities. My primary school growing up, uniform was something like this, although we used to wear dark skirts and white shirts. These are residues from the colonial period, where kids wore uniform to school, up to date. It's a great equalizer. So you can go to school to somebody who's very wealthy and you'll never know, because they also have to wear uniform. So that was a cool thing about that. Except their shoes will probably not have holes, because it looks like this kid's shoes have holes. I can relate. Anyway, so that is life in the rural areas. It can be really difficult, but it's simple. And for some people, it just works. And then we have this. This is Nairobi. You get your super highways, you have and today it's actually gotten, I don't know if it's worse. We went to Kenya in 2019, 2020, and there's some malls I even felt uncomfortable. I was like, I don't belong in here, because of how they were. Because I don't know, Kenyans have started exploring the internet market, and people are making crazy amounts of money. People are flying to New York to shop and go back, and you might say, oh, I live in America, and they feel sorry for you. Like, oh, how cute, because of how, yeah. So in Kenya, if you have money, it's you can live really well, but also that means that it's a lot of challenge, because people are constantly feeling the pressure to get more, because you want to have access to all those things that you're seeing around you. So that is also the downside. Overpopulated, some parts of Nairobi, this is where you've seen, of course, this is where the BBC and the like to focus on, the slums and all that. Those exist because a lot of people move to the cities from the rural areas trying to find a better life. And then they find that that's not how it works, and they end up living in slums and just horrible lives, So some people end up saying, I can't hack the city, I need to go back to home, because everybody has a home country. Everybody has a countryside that they came in, unless they were abandoned by their parents. In that case, you're on your own, okay? So let us see what else. Fun stuff, food. Who doesn't love food? So each ethnic group has a type of food that they are associated with. The Kikuyu, for instance, and there's a reason for that. Each ethnic group lived in a particular geographical area. The highlands grew certain types of foods. The savannah, people kept animals. So they'll probably be paleo-like. They're gonna eat meat, they're gonna eat milk, they're gonna eat all those things. And then the people up here, they're eating their rice, their beans and corn, because that's what they can grow. And then down here, you'll notice we have pilau and chapati. These are our friends from the coast. Because of the coastal influence, the Arabic influence, the Indian influence, and then with an East African twist. So it's very spicy food. Bajia, this is street food. This is like you take your potatoes, slice them into small pieces, dip them in butter with eggs and something and spices, and then deep fry them, and then serve them in a piece of newspaper, on the streets. Probably not, you don't want to do that the first time you go. You'll probably spend your 5 days just having tummy issues. I made that mistake. I had been in the US for a while, and then I went back thinking my tummy was still the same. So I bought food from the street. I kid you not, those 5 days back, I spent in the restroom. It was horrible. So you don't want to do that. Make sure you're used to that first and then try that, because it's absolutely delicious. I don't know what they do to the food. Anywho, so this is Githeri. My ethnic group is Kikuyu, the central province. So we grow corn, we grow rice, and I'll also tell you about the exports later. And we don't grow rice. Rice grows in Embu and the like, and other places like that. The food is absolutely bland. The Kikuyu people, my people, the food is very, very bland. No spices. Also, a reason for that. Have you ever tried West African food? Extremely spicy, hot, and you actually need 2 gallons of water to eat it. That is, if you're not West African. But because they live in very hot areas, they needed spices to preserve food and to mask any staleness. If food was going bad, you don't want to waste, so it's just put a lot of spices. India, they have a lot of spices. That's because also of that. You kind of need to keep the food edible. So you use a lot of spices to keep things going. So you'll notice people that have spicy food come from very hot areas. There's a reason. And then the Kikuyu, because they're in the highlands, they don't need that. So food is just absolutely bland. If you've tried spicy food and then you eat Kikuyu food, you're like, ugh. There's a running joke in Kenya among the ethnic groups, Kikuyus can't cook. It's not that we can't cook, it's just we've never had the reason to learn how to do all those things. So chapati, pilau, bajia, and githeri. I only put githeri here just because I'm Kikuyu and that's my people's food. And then we have mandazi. This is like African donuts. We don't add a lot of sugar as Americans do. And then there's fish. These are from my people from the coast, and not the coast, the Western province. They love their fish and nyanza, and these are collard greens. We don't cook collard greens for hours. These are like 5-10 minutes collard greens max, okay? And samosas. So these are meat pies, the best thing since I don't even know what. So you like little pockets. In America, I use tortillas and then just put some meat in there and then deep fry them, the best things. Anyway, so these are some of the things that Kenyans and most East Africans, because like I said, it's not like culture has borders. It gets to the Ugandan border, it's like, no, I'm not going in there. No, so there's a lot of transference between the different ethnicities. So actually, let me show you something. Next one. So Uganda, it's a landlocked country. That means it is not surrounded by any big water bodies. They have the perfect climate for bananas. So they cook something called matoke. So it's just bananas that they're boiled and then they are spiced up, and then they really do a great job. So that has also spilled into Kenya. So that also has become a Kenyan cuisine, okay? So, and then let us see, exports. Have you ever seen all the tea people drink, all the coffee people drink? Of course, some of them come from South America, but a lot of them come from East Africa. Uganda and Kenya grow some of the best coffee in the world. It's a different You can tell it's not the bold Colombian type. It's more the acidic type. If you're more into milder acidic type of coffee, that probably comes from Kenyan and Ethiopian highlands. And then we also grow a lot of tea. So this pretty thing here you're seeing, those are tea plantations, absolutely gorgeous. It's like undulating plains of tea as far as your eyes can see. It's beautiful. They grow in the Rift Valley province of Kenya. Have you ever heard of the Rift Valley? This is just like a huge fault line that passes right in the middle of Kenya, north-southwards. And it has interesting climate, and that sometimes that allows for tea, because tea requires cold and rainy, but not too cold, just right. And then these are coffee beans, berries. They are called berries before they're thingy. They are roasted and they ripen and all that. It's a whole process. I don't really know how they do that. And we are also, Kenya is also one of the largest exporters of flowers. Yeah, so they have huge greenhouses that allow for the transportation of beautiful flowers all the way to Europe. I don't know if they make it to the United States, but I know Europe is a huge consumer of Kenyan flowers. So now that we have talked about tea, would you like to learn how to make Kenyan tea? Because that's where we are going. Okay, so Kenyan tea is lovely. Why do I say that? Because actually I feel sad for people who go to Starbucks and order chai tea. I really do. Because when you drink the real thing, I don't think you'll ever drink the Starbucks chai tea. So you boil, you get a saucepan depending on how many cups of tea you want. So bring your water to boil on a stove. And then if you have loose tea leaves, black tea leaves, get it from Amazon. You can get a pack that lasts you for years for about $8, you know. So depending on how many cups of tea you want, just put in a spoonful of tea for every 2 to 3 cups of water, and then let it continue boiling. And then add your spices, tea masala. So you can do cinnamon, if you like cinnamon. I'm not a fan of cinnamon. So I usually do cardamom and then ginger. Or you can just buy the whole thing that is already made. And then let it continue to boil. If you get milk and continue pouring into the milk as the water is boiling until you get to your perfect color of tea. There are people who like dark brown tea. I'm not a fan of that. I just like mine a little like this. This is how the color of milk of tea that I like. So I continue to simmer it until it starts rising. So you take it out, sieve it. Please don't drink it without straining it, because you're going to be drinking all that tea, loose tea, and that's not fun. So strain it. And then I usually like to put it in a big flask so I can sip on it the whole day, especially on cold winter days. It's the perfect drink. I like sugar in my tea. Some people don't. So a tablespoon of sugar, a teaspoon of sugar, stir it in and enjoy your beverage. And you can have it with the mandazi, that the donut. Most African pellets are not going to be, people don't like sweet, too much sweet. So our pastries will not have powdered sugar or syrups or anything like that. But if you like that, make your mandazi. There's recipes all over the world. Sprinkle your powdered sugar and you are good to go. Okay, so hopefully you will be able to do some tea soon. But like I said, YouTube has lots of recipes. This is just one that I personally like to do. So what we're going to do next, we are going to learn how to speak Swahili. Okay, so if you want to introduce yourself, there's lots of ways you can do that. However, just when you're meeting somebody that you don't know and you want to be formal, you say hujambo. If you can unmute yourself, this is going to be an interactive type of thing. Just speak out loud and so that you can hear yourself. So,
Hujambo.
Hujambo.
Very good. Hujambo. So jambo like an elephant, you know, you say jambo. Okay. And then if somebody says hujambo to you, this is how you respond. Si jambo. You want to try that?
Si
Jambo.
Yes. And you want to say ja. In Swahili, when you're saying your vowels, they sound exactly the way they're written. So ja is not ja, like English, you kind of make it an E, an E. So it's si jambo. Jambo, like
Jambo.
sound. Si
Jambo.
Jambo.
Yeah. So hujambo, si jambo. So here is the cool thing about what this greeting means. Don't you have a word? Don't you have a thing? That's what that literally means. Jambo is a thing. So are you without a thing? Are you okay? And then when you say si jambo, you're saying, I don't have a thing. I'm good, in other words, So hujambo, si jambo. Now, because most Bantu language, actually most African cultures are they respect the elders. So they have a specific greetings for people who are in higher positions than you are or older. So you say shikamo. So if you want to meet somebody who's just older than you are, you say shikamo.
Shikamo.
Yeah. Shikamo. Yeah. So what you're really saying, I bow to you, like shikamo. And then they respond, mara haba. Mara haba. Yeah.
Marahaba.
Yes. And what that literally means is just a few times. I accept the bowing, but just a few times. So mara is times, haba is a few. So let's try again. Shikamo.
Shikamo.
Marahaba.
Marahaba.
Okay. So the first one is hujambo.
Jambo.
Si jambo.
Si
Jambo.
Very good. And then this one is shikamo.
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 To which you respond,
Marahaba.
very good. Okay, now let's move on to how do you say your name? Of course, just like any other language, there are many ways of saying that. But today we're going to just learn about one. Jina means name. Jina is name.
Gina.
But if you want to say mine, Jina langu. Langu.
Langu.
Yes. So that means name mine is. Sorry, I need to write that properly. Langu ni. Ni is. Okay. So name mine is. Jina langu ni.
Jina langu ni.
So you can say that and just fill in your name. Go for it.
Jina langu ni Korea.
Jina langu ni Ronda.
Vizuri. That means very good. So Jina langu ni Karen. Okay, that's how I would say my name is. Now, if I want to ask you what your name is, what I will say is Jina lako ni nani. So notice it's almost the same. The only thing that changed here is the ko. That gives you a clue that you're asking somebody something, the person you're asking. So Jina lako ni nani. Yeah. So name yours is who? That's what that is. Okay. So say you meet somebody for the first time. You say, Jina langu ni Karen. Jina lako ni nani? And then they tell you what their name is. So
what is the nani again? Nani?
Nani is who?
Who? Okay.
Yeah. So who, I mean, like name, yours is who?
Got it.
Yeah. So I'm going to pick on somebody. Lila. Jina langu ni Karen. Jina lako ni nani?
Jina langu ni Lila.
Vizuri sana. Very good. Christina, jina langu ni Karen. Jina lako ni nani?
Jina langu ni Christina.
Vizuri sana. One more person. If who wants to volunteer? Okay, I'll go for Rhonda.
Okay.
And Rhonda, you're going to ask me what my name is.
Okay. Jina langu ni Rhonda. Jina lako ni nani?
Oh, jina langu ni Karen. Vizuri sana. That is
Vizuri.
excellent. Asante sana. So if you want to say thank you, you say asante.
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 Ante.
Yes, asante is how you say what your name is. And then when you come to end of things like we have come now, you say kwaheri.
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 Yeah, so well, that's all I had prepared for you. I'm going to hand over the session back to Shantel, and then if you have any questions, I'm sure she's gonna give us that opportunity to do that.
Asante. Missouri.
Asante sana.
Great job. Great job. Thank you so much, Karen, for your presentation. Did you all have any questions or that you wanted to ask Karen? Anything about Kenya or Swahili from the presentation that she went over? The Maasai people? Anything? No?
But it was good.
She did a good job. She covered everything.
She did a great job, right?
Excellent.
Asante sana.
Well, Karen, do you want to put your website in the chat there? And that way, if y'all have any questions about anything, go directly to her, her link.
Yeah.
Karen, she just actually finished publishing a book. It's on Amazon, right, Karen?
Yes. So it's called A Comprehensive Guide to the Noun Class. I didn't think of, let me actually just write it on the, so that people can see. So it's called www.learnswahilinow.com. This is my website, and what I do here is a lot of classes they do. You have to meet with the teacher one-on-one. What I've done is I've taken myself and recorded myself in videos and all that stuff. And I have created a comprehensive course where somebody can learn Swahili. And I'm constantly writing different things. And that's what she was talking about. I just published a book on noun classes, which is an important component of Swahili. And it just went on Amazon. Actually excited about that. It just happened a few weeks ago. It's called A Comprehensive Guide to the noun classes. But the cool thing is this weekend I'm having a free webinar talking about the noun classes. If anybody has time, they can come. That would be fun. First Central PM this Saturday, the 20th. Yeah, so that's a little bit about what I do and teach.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Karen, for that. All right. Super.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to make sure I just kind of spread the word about her wonderful book and her website. She, like she said, she has a platform where you can actually do self-study, where you don't want to always do the one-on-ones. You can just go through the course and meet with her occasionally. So anyway, I have recorded the session. I'm going to stop the recording now. But everyone, let's wave really quick because she might be able to use some of this in her footage. I don't know. So just wave.
I do have a question.
Okay.
Okay.
In the United States,